Welcome to the show. I'm David Nelson, the Money Runner. Got a lot to discuss today and some breaking news, but before we go to that, I want to focus on the weekend. If you're like me, you're probably sitting around with friends. I'll bet the topic of $5 gas came up. It was a headline on almost every major newspaper in the country. It probably speaks, I think, to the mood of the nation. On Friday, Americans were jolted with the hottest inflation report in some years. The CPI, the Consumer Price Index came in at plus 8.6% and plus 1% month on month. As you might expect, markets ended at the lows Friday, kind of setting up the very terrible price action we had today. Now, make no mistake, this isn't just about Wall Street or about stock traders losing money today. This affects you too. It affects your retirement plans, your saving plans. Maybe it even affects those going to college. Of course, all of this begs the question, what's next and what can be done about it? Let's find out. Welcome back. I'm David Nelson. Look, I guess on its own, the CPI report on Friday, that would probably be enough for negative price action for the next several days. But we got a double whammy on Friday. Consumer sentiment, kind of a measure of how consumers feel about spending right now, lowest levels since the 1970s. The bigger issue is that even if this is the top for inflation, let's say it's peak inflation, and I'm not really on board with that, but let's say that it is. What are we going down to? The Fed would like us to believe that they're going to get this down, create a soft landing, get us down to about 2%. I think 5 is the new 2. We'll be lucky to get that. And at 5%, that means tighter financial conditions for a pretty long time. Now, right now, you got a lot of Fed officials, the FOMC, the Federal Open Market Committee, and some in the administration that continue to step up to the microphone day by day, giving you the same old tired rhetoric. They'll say that they've got all the tools in place to get the job done. We're getting a lot of talk the talk, but what we need is a lot more walk the walk. As of today, the Fed funds rate is just 0.75%. Fed is expected to raise rates on Wednesday, maybe 0.5%, another 0.5% at the next meeting, and probably another 50 basis points in September. I think they're going to have to go faster than that because they've got a $9 trillion balance sheet that they're only just beginning to unwind. We're at 8% inflation. We may not have the luxury of waltzing through this at a leisurely pace. Now, Washington has their job to do too, and certainly the administration has a role here. They certainly don't get a pass. Trust me, I know you've heard me beat up the president in the past. This isn't going to be a partisan exercise. I saved the best for last, honestly. Both sides of the congressional aisle get an F for their efforts on this. All right, so I'm going to start off with President Biden. I'm going to start off with his op-ed that appeared in the Wall Street Journal maybe about a week ago. It was his plan, what he was laying out to the American people, his plan on fixing inflation in this country. You know, I've read it probably 6 times at this point. I'd say it reads more like an infomercial than a plan or a vision. So I'm going to take something out of context. Hiring more IRS workers to go after billionaires who they feel aren't paying their fair share or maybe evading taxes through what I would call legal loopholes. I get that. That kind of makes sense. You might even sign me up for that. But what does that have to do with inflation? Save that for the political agenda. Also focusing right at the top on Putin and Israel. Everyone on the planet understands that the Russian invasion is adding to the inflation pain. But these prices were going up long before Russian troops were sitting on Ukraine's doorstep. Now, the one area that I have agreement with the president is probably healthcare. I think he's actually got some good ideas here. I certainly agree with the president that Medicare should be able to negotiate with drug companies on pricing. I concede to the president on this point. However, an even better approach would be legislation that would force drug companies to stop the practice of charging a higher price here in the United States than what they get overseas. Let's level the playing field. I think a lot of Americans believe that in Europe and other parts of the world, their cost of healthcare is just a lot lower. Well, of course it is. You and I help pay for it. We subsidize it. How does that happen? Well, here in the United States, drug companies charge a price that covers their cost of discovery. That could be hundreds of billions of dollars for a single drug. They add a margin, all right, and make a profit. That's capitalism, all right? I'm on board with that. Overseas, they know they can't get that price. They won't pay it. So what do? They charge a price that just covers the cost of manufacturing that. They get that incremental revenue, maybe make a little bit on the side, not as much as they make here, of course. We subsidize that, and we're helping foot the bill. We're covering most of it. End that, and you've got something. I promise you, costs will come down here. They'll go up over there, just like water seeks its own level. The drug companies will make the same revenue they do today, can reinvest that money back into drug discovery and continue getting those life-saving drugs that, of course, we all need. All right, I'm going to shift gears here and take it to the energy complex, because we can't have a meaningful discussion about energy without covering all of its forms. Energy touches everything. You probably heard me say this before. Energy touches every line item of the income statement, not just in a corporation, your income statement. I don't care whether you're an industrial complex, you have a small business, you're working a small business from home, or you're just driving to and from work. Those high prices, those $5 gas prices and $6 diesel prices, they hit you each and every day. Those $6 gas prices translate into higher cost of goods, whether it's food, whether it's something you buy at CVS, something you buy at Target, Walmart, you name it, it's hitting us. Now, the president's desire to put America on a path toward alternative energy, that's a sport supported by a lot of people, including yours truly. However, it's not a 5 or 10 year journey. What you don't do is bury the American economy on the way to achieve your goal. Attacking the U.S. energy complex to score political points makes no sense at all. Pivoting to OPEC, not a very friendly part of the world, rather than to Texas, it's counterintuitive. You got to find a different way. We're going to need an all of the above approach to make this work. Every form of energy we can get our hands on. Fossil fuel energy, hydro, nuclear, solar, wind, you name it, we're going to need it. Now, I said I was going to save the best for last, and that's Congress. There's a reason why congressional approval rating is below that even of the president, all right? Because they don't get the job done. Why? Because congressional debate in this country has come down to what I call I win, you lose politics. Helping the American people seems to take a backseat to hurting your political opponent. I get it. It's an election year. 2022 is the midterms. God forbid somebody on the other side of the aisle had a good idea that we should explore. Nothing gets done. Republicans and Democrats both share the blame in this. So how can we move on, and how can we shift this into the right direction? Well, we got to change the way we do things in Washington. Right now, the president passes executive orders. He gets a few things done there. Congress can't seem to get anything done. They can't seem to pass anything. The Democrats will pass something in the House. It won't get through the Senate. Now, I get why the president uses an executive order. He's not the only one. It's been used quite a bit in the last 20 years by a lot of presidents, sometimes a couple of hundred a year. Unfortunately, an executive order only may have the lifespan of the term of the president. President Trump found that message out the hard way. Now, I would say, I kind of skipped over this, I would say the holy grail of presidents that used executive orders was FDR. He used probably over 3,000. I think the exact number was 3,721 executive orders. Biden is only at 90. Now, I said before that that President Trump found out the hard way about an executive order getting taken away. On his first day in office, President Biden unwound probably a half dozen the first day. And before the end of the month, quite a few were undone. Some of these covered immigration. Some of these covered the energy complex, oil leases, you name it, was part of the Biden agenda to move away from our own fossil fuel production. Those executive orders didn't have much of a lifespan. And like I said, we have the problem that we have today. So what can President Trump do? Excuse me, what can President Biden do? All right. What he can do is start to work with Congress and help pass legislation to get this moving on to the American people. We got to move beyond an executive order. We got to pass legislation in Congress, because no CEO is going to commit capital to a project without some idea of the regulatory backdrop and what it's going to look like 4 years from now. Any real effort to attack these problems, I don't care what it is, energy, infrastructure, climate change, you name it, it's got to come from Congress. Why? Because legislation has a life of its own. It lasts much longer than an executive order. An executive order can be canceled with the stroke of a pen. A legislation, you got to take over the House, you got to take over the Senate, and then even the president has got to veto it before it gets taken away. All right, I said a lot there, so I got to think a second and gather my thoughts. If you did this and you accomplished some of what I'm talking about, you give U.S. corporations the confidence they need to commit the capital that we need to solve these very important, critical issues. All right. Now, you've heard me say this before. The truth rarely lives on the extremes. Compromise is a word that you don't hear much in Congress anymore. It seems to be you don't even hear much in families. Sometimes you don't even hear much of it at work. But compromise is an imperative for any government that serves an open and free society. We need it in all walks of life. All right, I covered a lot of ground today. I rambled a little bit, but I think we covered a lot of points here. If you like this show and you like what you're hearing on The Money Runner, go to our website at The Money Runner, sign up, pass it on to your friends. That's it for me this week. I'll be back again next week. Thanks for joining. I'm David Nelson, The Money Runner.